Hello everybody, this is Dom from Upstate Supernatural, and this week we have a new episode of Our Paranormal Stories. And our special guest for this week is none other than a good friend of mine. He and I actually collaborated to create Paranormal Global TV, Simon James. And I'm going to go ahead and there you go. If you'd like to tell a little bit more about yourself, I mean, everybody probably knows who you are. You're Simon James.
I'm not that famous, bro. Okay, well, hello, everybody. I'm Simon James, as a lot of you probably know, but for those of you that don't, I am what I would call a paranormal investigator, what is generally known as a paranormal investigator. I use all sorts of different devices, ranging from ghost boxes, laser lights, sound experimentation, to my hands, my own feelings. I try and document as much as I can in the way of paranormal activity in sort of my local area. And more recently, I've been trying to investigate applications and ghost boxes within my own home. I say more recently, for like the past year and a half now, maybe. It's been going on for quite a while. So yeah, that's pretty much me and my channel at the moment and what I'm doing. Yes.
Now whatever, I don't think I've ever actually asked you specifically, whatever got you drawn into the paranormal? Like what, was there certain things that happened to you or a certain occurrence that kind of drove you into the paranormal?
Yeah, absolutely. Where to begin? Okay, so when I was young, when I was like a little boy, little baby boy, I had some really freaky, pretty harrowing experiences in my home. Things like night terrors, sleep paralysis, seeing things that I probably shouldn't have known existed. You know, kind of like, how to describe it? When you're really young and your parents don't show you horror movies and they don't tell you what a skeleton is and they don't tell you what a ghoul or a ghost is, but you see things that are kind of like scary as hell, like, oh my god, like heart-stopping scary. That was, to name a few, some of the experiences I had in one particular house when I was very young. And as I got older, it kind of slowed down. We moved out of that house and I didn't have half as many experiences, but every now and then I would experience something that was not quite right. I've got a story which I wrote down on my channel there, and it depicts one of the most harrowing experiences I did have in that old flat that I used to live when I was young. And then since then, moving on, I haven't experienced things to that degree. I suppose being a child, our imagination can run away with us at certain times, but this kind of stuff was things that I probably shouldn't have. I don't imagine I was ever watching horror movies when I was a kid. I don't imagine I was getting told stories about ghosts coming out of the curtains and the light fittings morphing into demonic faces and kind of snapping at me. And I ended up in the bathtub one night in freezing cold water, and my mum didn't know how I got there. And there was one other occasion where I ended up in the middle of, for your American guys, I'm not sure if you know what a dual carriageway is. It's like a freeway. It's like it's like a freeway or a highway. Two lanes, cars speeding by one direction and the other. And I ended up in the center of it when I was 3 years old, just standing there laughing at the cars. And to get there, I would have had to have unlocked a door, which was physically impossible for a 3-year-old to put his hand up and unlock. I was too small. The door was probably 4.5, 5 foot up there, and I'm not even a 2-foot baby. So certain things that had happened when I was really young have always given me an interest in paranormal activity and ghost hunting and that kind of stuff. And then obviously as I got older, shows came out on TV. There was movies made, there was documentaries and lots of other things about ancient stories of mythology and things like that, and it interested me greatly. One of the things that really drew me in, we're talking maybe only 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago now, just before I actually moved up to this area of Britain. I was walking to work. I was on my way to do a shift, and this guy was driving this car like a lunatic down the road, and he went past me a couple of times, and I had like this kind of premonition, he's going to crash. I didn't like see it like a vision. It wasn't like what you guys would stereotypically associate with being in the movies. It was just a feeling, this guy's going to have a crash in a second. I can see it happening. And sure enough, he had a crash. But it was the circumstances of said crash that really started making me believe that there was more to life than just people being wherever they're going to be. It gave me a profound feeling of like, there is a guiding hand here. There is more higher beings that are in control of what's happening. Because when he crashed, the car was heading towards me. It bounced off of one side of the road to the other side of the road on its roof, and then came back. And I happened to be right in the center of that like triangle motion of where this car's bouncing, and I watched the whole thing go by in like slow motion, and it made me feel like I was in just the right place at just the right time to not die. Because if I was 10 seconds ahead or 15 seconds behind, or if I had crossed the road at any point, I would have been squashed basically by that bouncing car. And it gave me a real sense of like, there's a guiding kind of hand here. There must be such things as like angels. And on the flip side of that, this guy must have been under the influence of something demonic. I don't necessarily mean that he was possessed and I was protected. I mean like, you know, that good and evil kind of balance right there. Something was going on in that situation that really made me feel, I don't know, strange. For the next couple of weeks afterwards, I was dwelling on it a lot, and it was really, it hit me quite hard. Like at that point, which was when I started investigating quite seriously, pretty much straight after that. So to name a few, those are some of the things that have drawn me to the paranormal.
Now, I've seen with your channel, I mean, specifically, if anybody doesn't know, Simon James or his YouTube channel, you can type that in YouTube and just type in Simon James and it should take you right there. He's also a featured channel on the side of Upstate Supernatural. But you've kind of dabbled a little bit into like rituals. And I don't know if I would say witchcraft, but I would definitely say rituals. What kind of pushed you to go that route? What kind of pushed you to look into that realm instead of some of the other areas? I mean, the paranormal is definitely a vast term between aliens, ghosts, Sasquatch, and you know the Loch Ness monster. I'm just curious, what kind of pushed you into the ritual aspect?
Okay. So what pushed me in towards doing ritualism in my own room, in my own environment? It's kind of a tough question, I'll be honest with you. It's a great question though. I'm going to try and answer it as best I can. When I was about 15, I knew a witch. A girl, it was one of my friends. She was female, and her grandma was a witch. She was a witch. I expect her children will probably be witches. And she taught me like some things, but not a lot of things. I mean, to me, she was really different, really flamboyant, and kind of mystical and magical in a way. She would talk to the moon. She would talk to crystals. She would touch certain things and put her hands in places where I wouldn't think. Like, I would literally think to myself, like, that's a bit strange. What are you doing that for? She's like, oh, I'm feeling the energies. And after having that experience and starting to, I guess, use ghost boxes and try and interact with spirits, I kind of just had a feeling of, I mean, as you know, I like to do a lot of research.
Right.
And within my research, I stumble upon a lot of things, which then leads me to reading whole entire different sections of whatever I was starting with. And witchcraft was one of these. I learned, like, this could be kind of controversial. This is just stuff that I've studied, so please don't take it as gospel. But I learned where the origins of witchcraft had come from after studying spirituality and religion. And it led me on to believing that in using rituals and using intent in the right way, I might be able to actually conjure spirits into the area that I am. Like,
yeah, I mean, you had
rituals.
fascinating things like the dolls that would move by themselves, and
Yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
had definitely interesting things on your channel.
So I believed quite strongly that if I could summon these things up, if you will, conjure them up, then I could potentially conjure something physical that would manifest itself physically on camera and infallibly prove the existence of these spirits, if you will. And in doing that, I pretty much immersed myself in an 8-month or 9-month study of witchcraft. I bought like 20 odd books, read them all front to back. I was doing a lot of ritualism and conjuration. And then I started learning about things that were a little older than that still. Well, not necessarily older than witchcraft, but an older part of witchcraft that hasn't been modernized to this day. Because a lot of things that we read in books now are kind of modernized. They've been given new names, they've been given different ideals to them when they weren't originally that. And I'm the type of person that thinks, I mean, if I'm going to try and use a typical example of something,
Oh, the Divine Comedy, you know.
yeah, it's kind of difficult to find a typical example.
I
But
mean, the Divine Comedy, the first iteration of it, I believe, was all in Italian, and then they rewrote it into English, and they definitely switched a lot of things around in it to make it so it was easier for individuals to understand what the writer was trying to convey.
right. Yeah, that's kind of how it's happened. Things have been rewritten to try and make things easier to understand, if you will. That's a good way of putting it right there, is they've tried to interpret it into a modernized way of thinking. However, for me, myself, that takes away from whatever the writings originally were. So I like to go back and read original texts. Now, granted, I can't read Hebrew and I can't read Sanskrit, so I do have to read the English equivalent of them. But I prefer to take the first versions, like the first writings, if I can find them, and read those, as opposed to reading like the 1960s version or the 1991 rewrite or whatever. And in studying all of that, I mean, it led me to believe that doing rituals within my room might actually give me some sort of activity, if you will, something that's provable, to say like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm in this environment, I've got this intent going on, trying to literally create whatever's happening here. And then when something happens, it's like, okay, so weirdness, guys, right?
No, I mean, being a paranormal investigator, as am I have a lot of theories in the aspect of I think if the spirits are intelligent and you're going into a location that's haunted and you're holding out cameras or holding out voice recorders, and if they passed away recently, they're going to know what those devices are. And if they don't want to be seen or they don't want to be heard, they're not going to be letting themselves be seen. The one time we actually felt we captured something that we felt was possibly a spirit going across in the room, it looked like a child. It looked like a child that probably wouldn't know any better. And it was also the first time we ever had a surveillance camera in that room. But since that, we really hadn't seen anything like that happen again. So I'm curious, what are your theories on that? Do you kind of feel the same way, or?
I've had an experience recently where I was investigating out in the middle of a field, and I was using this actually. I have it next to me. I was using this laser pen and pointing it at a crystal, which was then creating light refraction and beaming little tiny laser beams all over the place. And we had a few ghost boxes going on. This was an investigation with Southwest Ghosts, Steve Morgan's. And during that investigation, we had what sounds like a young lad, like a little boy, bending down to the camera and saying, "What's this?" And it was at the point that the laser was on, the ghost box was on. I need to find my remote. My TV's about to turn off. Sorry. Oh, I can't shut it down. Okay, we're back. So I had this experience where this young lad says, "What's this?" So I think I can agree with you there. Older spirits, if they've passed on from, let's say, 1980s and below, aren't necessarily going to know what these devices are, because they wouldn't have seen them. I mean,
well, unless they were told by an investigator, say it's a, like an asylum or a heavily investigated area, where the investigators explain what they are. I mean, I've always been curious on that. If they,
I also have a theory, and it does pertain to what we're talking about right here. If you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, definitely.
So what you said about the spirits that are kind of newer, they would know what these devices are, and if they didn't want to be heard or didn't want to be seen, they wouldn't. And if they did and knew how to use it, they would come and do that. But you also speak about spirits being intelligent, having intellect, thinking for themselves. So if that was the case, and a spirit was, say, 500 years old, for example, and was roaming around for 500 years, would they not also know what a movie is and what a voice recorder is, just from being able to view and understand using their intelligence? Well, I have a different theory. I believe that when a person dies and their spirit, or their, in what I call their thought form, is left behind, it's left behind as like a shell of what they were in life. And it continues in that prerogative. It doesn't necessarily learn anything new, per se. It kind of continues in that cycle, which is given like some clarity by residual hauntings. Like a ghost will constantly appear walking down the same set of stairs, or appearing in the same window all the time. But then there are these other types of hauntings which make me think otherwise. We have poltergeist activity, which is, and then these poltergeists at the same time can also latch on to certain people and will attack these people. I mean, that shows a sign of malice, which is intelligence in one sense. So I'm not so sure, really. It's something that I still am trying to figure out. Do they have intelligence, or do they continue in their...
Right. I mean, a theory...
It's a tough one, man.
A theory, in a way, was that, what they see is what they remember. Say they're from the 50s, they say the building changed, it still looks like the building from the 50s to them.
Okay.
That's been a theory that's been thrown out there.
Because I've heard stories of ghosts that walk up staircases that are no longer there.
Right.
And that would make, that would give more credibility to those kinds of theories.
I actually don't have it released on my channel, but there's an investigation. This was actually at the Finger Lakes Mall where we're holding the expo. And the upstairs of this one store location, that it was an empty storefront. We would go up there, and every time he took a picture with the flash, you would hear a man say, "Stop shooting me." Well, in this other room, this larger room, if you turn off the lights, it just kind of, you felt like something was near you, in an essence. So I had the brilliant idea one day to bring in a newspaper. If people are trying to communicate with the spirits, and the spirits think that we're trying to trick them, I can't tell you how many times through EVP in that room alone, I was like, this is today's date, blah, 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 blah. And, you'd get an EVP that kind of questioned it. So I brought in a newspaper, set it down on the floor, put a voice recorder next to it. I believe it was a New York Times. I made sure it was a newspaper that kind of was old enough, had an old enough history that anybody from the area would know. And as soon as I set it down, we left. We left the area. There was no outside contamination of any audio. I go back and listen to it, and it literally sounds like a crowd of individuals trying to talk. It's so staticky, but you can still hear all these little voices in there. And the only one that I can hear clear was look at the date. That was it. But I mean, I think a lot of it is maybe I've always been curious if they think we're the ghosts.
Right?
Even though we think they're the ghosts.
Have you seen that film, The Others?
Yes, sir.
With, I can't remember the actress's name.
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, yeah. And they're the ghosts.
Yep.
And they're living out their life in this house, and things are changing around them, and they're like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, like at the end of the film, they see the living family who they think are the ghosts. And yeah, that's a creepy theory, man. That's a really creepy theory. What if we're the ghosts?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
to them, they're living their lives, and we're the ghosts.
No. I mean, like, what if they're not? No, because then you just kind of clarify. You put the paper, and they were like, look at the date.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I said questions like,
"You're making my head spin, Dom."
Do you like the New York Yankees? Yeah, I mean, I live in New York, and if you're from New York, the Yankees have been in existence for quite a long time. I mean, almost 100 years. Actually, probably close to 100 years. And I was like, do you like the New York Yankees? And I mean, dude, I was getting answers in EVP. And I'm just like, you got to be shitting me. Like, maybe they just don't believe us. Maybe when we're talking to them, they don't believe what we're trying to say. Because
maybe they think we're tricking them.
They might be afraid to face that fact, that the date is that date. Or what they see isn't what is actually what we see.
Right. I've got I've heard a theory that you can get more communication from spirits if you ask them to ask themselves who they are. So it's like me saying, like, ask yourself who you are, Dom. Ask yourself the question, who am I? And then you sit there and you think to yourself, who am I? I'm Dom. I host this show and I do this. The moment you get them thinking about themselves like that, it helps them to like secure more of like a hold on who they are, and then they can kind of talk to you more. It might be that these thought forms are kind of lost. You hear that a lot as well, like lost souls, lost spirits.
Yeah, I've definitely with a lot of the EVP stuff. I mean, I've gotten a lot of stuff of that I thought it said I can't be forgiven, or if I would shine a light. And again, it's in the same location. Numerous. I mean, I'm talking probably over 300 EVPs in this location that I've captured.
Wow.
And,
where is this? Is this Finger Lakes?
Yeah, it's right in the Finger Lakes, in the Finger Lakes Mall. Right now, actually, for the expo, the Spirits of Halloween store will be in there. Hopefully next year, we're shooting to get them out of there so we can have people investigate in there. But the whole mall itself...
Forgive me for not knowing, but is the place derelict or is it still in use?
It's still in use, but there's a lot of stores that have left it. Nowadays in the United States, a lot of the malls, unless they're a very large mall, they're not really surviving too well.
Right.
There's probably, it used to have up to 25 stores in it, and I would say there's 6 that are in it now. Yeah, I mean, so it's down.
Sounds
quite
like
a bit.
my old hometown. It had like a town centre and it's got about 6 shops. That's it. The rest have closed down.
Yeah, we've captured some pretty outstanding stuff even throughout the whole thing. But
Actually, I wish I was into, like, I wish I bought cameras and electronic voice detecting things like maybe 10 years ago, because where I used to live in Borden, there was two places that everybody in town would always say, "Oh, that's a haunted house, don't go in there," and no one would ever go in there. Even as kids, we wouldn't go in there because we were afraid of it. And then there was this mansion. There's a giant mansion up on a field, out just completely derelict, and we used to go in there because it was a mansion and it was cool. And we used to go and like do stupid things in there, you know, break in and go and get drunk as kids. Kids being kids, that's what we did. But I wish I was investigating paranormal things back then, because the mansion's recently been renovated. But man, the stories of that old place, like the experiments that went on in the basement underground, and I wish I had got in there and done EVP captures, because it was a creepy old place. Huge, completely derelict mansion. I mean, you know how big a mansion is, think bigger. It was
that's awesome.
Huge. It was ridiculously big. You know, hundreds and hundreds of rooms. And the grounds that it was on was probably about, I don't know, maybe 10 acres of ground, and it was just right up there at the back of a hill. Just creepy place. But yeah, it's been renovated and is now a police station, so there'll be no investigating in there.
Actually, I do know a team that just investigated a sheriff's jailhouse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How did that go for him?
They seem to catch quite a few different things. I was in Lyons, New York, I believe.
Right.
But yeah, it was. I think it was actually they built a new sheriff's station, and that was the old one that they still hadn't done too much with. But that'd still be interesting. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's some very strange or awful things that probably happen in there.
Yeah, it's probably got some stories. Being that type of area, that type of building is going to have some stories to it. I wonder if, I mean, it's not something I really ever thought about, asking the police if I could investigate one of their buildings. I don't think they'd really take too much notice of it. They'd be like, "No, sorry." But maybe, you know, if you get friendly with a couple of them, they might let you.
I actually did have something I was gonna pop out with real quick. I just had it on the top of my head, swung away. But yeah, I mean, have you ever investigated any of the castles? I mean, that's always been kind of on my bucket list.
I did Hadley Castle. It's just a ruin now. There's really nothing left of it. Just a couple of towers and what used to be the old castle grounds. It was where, I believe, based on the stories and based on investigations that I was reading before I went there, it was the home of 3 of Henry VIII's wives at one point. And I forget the guy's name now, but he was regent of the UK, made him like the second most powerful man in the country, and he was the one that originally had it built. I can't even remember what king it was. I've got the whole investigation on YouTube. This was a long time ago I did this. But yeah, I investigated that castle, and nothing really, to be totally honest. All the stories that came out of it were all pointed towards smugglers creating the apparitions using coloured lanterns and hiring actors to scare off like local walkers and things so that they could smuggle their gear through the tunnels underneath Essex. But that was a cool place. It was fun to investigate. The closest thing I had to paranormal activity was the wind stopping when I asked a question, and then continuing straight after, which was kind of odd, but wind is wind, man. Wind will do what wind does.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're most notably known in this area for being one of the locations Harriet Tubman resided. That she did part of the Underground Railroad during the Civil War. So we're pretty well known in that aspect. There's also, and I'd like to try to get into it, Theodore Case mansion, which he basically, Theodore Case did quite a few different things. In Auburn, the sound in movies back in like the 30s and so, that was created
cool.
by the Case family.
Cool.
He also used to have meetings at his house, because I actually know his great-great-granddaughter, Nikola Tesla, and Thomas Edison would come to his house, and they would have like scientific discussions. So I would absolutely love to go there and see if I could talk to him. You know, that'd be freaking...
Hell yeah. That would be brilliant. Oh man, Nikola Tesla, one of my most studied gentlemen of the last century. I probably spent more time studying that guy and looking into the things that he did than probably anybody else, I think. Yeah, quite an inspiration is Tesla. I want to recreate a Tesla coil radio at some point.
Yeah,
and set it on a...
I've been looking into
sweep.
it as well. Yeah, I think it'd be fascinating to...
They're not the easiest of things to build. They require some pretty expensive materials.
Yeah, really oddity also is Albert Einstein. He actually was in Auburn for like 5 years, and he taught classes at a monastery in Auburn.
At a monastery?
Yeah. So I mean, it's very odd that Tesla and Einstein were kind of in the same area. Probably not, obviously not at the same time, but it's very
Have you
interesting.
ever heard of Edward Leeds Scanlon?
I don't believe so, no.
Coral Castle?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Oh, that's going to be some light reading for you. You should definitely note that down and go and have a look at him. He was, in my opinion, on par with Tesla and Einstein in his genius. He basically single-handed, as a 50-plus-year-old man, built a castle. It's not like a proper castle, but he built something that was pretty magical on his own. And yeah, this shouldn't be possible, what he built, but he did. He claimed he knew the secrets of the Egyptians, and that was where he left it. He said, I know the secrets of the Egyptians, and just left it at that. He didn't even say what it was. But he left 3 books behind, and they're basically 3 books of riddles, which is really interesting. Fantastic read, if you ever get the chance.
No, I mean, we've never discussed this, but what do you think about there being different like dimensions, like different, basically, quantum physics in essence of each thought or each decision has its own universe. I mean, have you ever constituted that as part of investigating?
It's what I'm studying right now. Actually, it's why my opinion on spirit and spirituality is changing. It's changing quite dramatically, actually. So, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, I believe the 4th dimension, so we live in a 3-dimensional world, right? I've got a good way of explaining this. So, can't show you on the camera because I'd have to move the camera and all of that, but if you... maybe I can. Okay, check it out. The shadow of the matchbox on my hand. Nah, it's too bright. Anyway, look at the light. Look at a shadow. Everyone's got a light on, I expect. And look at your shadow. The shadow is in 2 dimensions. It's 2-dimensional space, basically. And the hand is the 3-dimensional representation of the 2-dimensional shadow. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
The hand, matchbox, every single thing you see in 3-dimensional space is the shadow of a 4th-dimensional object. Now, what is the 4th-dimensional object, you might ask? In my opinion, I believe that it is thought. Thought is the 4th dimension. And going beyond that, the 5th dimension would be where thought originates from, what I call source, and what most people would call God. And then beyond that, even then further, you go into 6th and 7th and 8th dimensions, and I think it continues on for quite some. I couldn't even begin to speculate with a human mind or contemplate what the 6th or 7th or 8th dimension is yet. I haven't reached that kind of level of education, should we say.
Now, you did state earlier about angels and demons and such. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that? Because I do know personally that you're kind of not a religious. You don't like to talk about religion too much. So
I don't, because, I mean, to put it lightly and quickly, I don't subscribe to a religion because I don't believe in separation. That would be the very short and stern answer. As to why I don't subscribe to a religion and why I don't really like to talk too much about it anymore. I did study under a pastor for 3, maybe 5 months, for quite a while, and he taught me a great deal about why I think that, shall we say. I basically learnt why I don't subscribe to separatist groups. I'm all about unifying, oneness, everybody being whole. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't like or I don't agree with certain ideals within them. I think there's truth to each kind of interpretation, but there's not one truth that's whole and all-encompassing yet, and we kind of need something like that to unify everybody. The problem with it is it always ends up separating. And that's what I've seen, that's what I've found. But when it comes to angels and demons, I believe they are figurative terms of speech to describe good and evil. That's literally what I think they are now. I've never really, even since I started this, believed in demons. And I kind of always thought that I had a guardian angel. So taking those two together, I believe in one but not the other. Is that not contradictive? Yes, it is. So I had to change my opinion. I had to study a little and try and figure out why I thought that. So what is an angel and what is a demon? In my opinion, it's just a way of describing good actions and evil actions. I think that spirits can be seen or interpreted as that when they're doing good and bad things, and we associate them with those words because those words are part of our language. It's kind of like when you bring up a kid with the anatomy of disgust and you teach him, no, poo's smelly, you don't touch that, you don't eat that, you don't put that in your mouth, you don't go near it. It's kind of like that. It's a bit of a loose way of describing it, but in my mind that is what it is. It's the way of describing something, and we immediately associate evil actions with demonic activity or possession in the field of paranormal, and we associate good actions and beings of light with angels or something that's sent from a heaven, if you believe in heaven.
Now, a curiosity is, what about spirit guides? Do you kind of have an opinion of
Yep.
of their existence and so forth? And then I actually do have another one after that I just
Okay,
thought
cool.
of.
I believe spirit guides are yourself. That might be a little difficult to swallow, but if you were to sit there for a moment and do a few breathing and meditation exercises to completely calm yourself, lower your heart rate, calm your thoughts, block out everything else, and then you sit there and just talk to yourself, you will notice that there's this voice in your head that you're communicating with. You're talking to it as if it's you, as if it's your brain, but you're not realizing that it's not your brain that's doing it. I mean, again, speculative or hypothetical, if you will. If you believe in this stuff, this is my opinion. But I believe that voice in your head, that is your spirit guide. That is your spirit, and it's guiding you. It's guiding you and your thoughts. It's not telling you what to do, it's guiding you. And that's how I see it. I don't see them as separate entities. I think that's us.
Now, to actually evolve a little bit on that topic, I mean, I've heard it termed in an essence of people being spirit guides. Like, certain people come into your life and kind of guide you through a certain event or through a certain occurrence. And then it kind of fades away. I mean, there's certain friends that I remember I was very close with when I was in high school and so forth, or beginning of college, and I haven't talked to them anymore. But during that time of your life, again, it could be more of just a generalization. I was just curious, what do you see any maybe validation or
I
thought
think I
behind
just
that?
need to add 3 letters and call them spiritual guides.
Yeah, yeah,
It's people that are good at listening, good at interpreting you, helpful with their advice, and friendly. Genuinely, that's spiritual guides. People that you look up to and respect or revere. I have one, so yeah, I have a spiritual guide, and they are, in essence, I mean, she is a spirit. She's a being of light, and she's having a human experience and teaching through it. So I can agree with you. Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
the other one, with spirit boxing, with trying to do spirit communication, trying to do paranormal investigating. Personally, for myself, I actually have found more of a stronger spirituality, more of a stronger faith in what I believe in for religion in essence. I was just curious if that kind of happened for you as well.
It's certainly bolstered my spirituality, yeah. It's allowed me to get more in touch with my spiritual side. And more recently, actually, since coming away from doing like the live streams and basically kind of trying to talk to spirits and ghost hunt every night, instead of doing it every night now, it's like maybe once a week. That's allowed me more time, even still, to get more in touch with my spiritual side and to research what I'm doing, because we can all, I mean, anyone can grab a ghost box and chuck themselves in the deep end, but without actually looking into what we're doing, as opposed to just doing it and having the experience ourselves, we're not really getting anywhere. So I feel, yes, it has helped me excessively progress on this spiritual journey. It's allowed me to learn things about myself. It's taught me to research more, to study more of what I'm doing. Like, I would get certain words through the ghost box or the echo vox while talking to the dolls or on the Ouija board. I would then go and research that. Would I have done that before if I was just listening to music and going to work and just repeating that as opposed to doing this in my spare time? Probably not. So yeah, it's definitely helped me.
Well,
Yeah.
I've always felt, and I'm sure you as well. I mean, we've had a lot of talks in the past, but the biggest key to living is knowledge. I mean,
Knowledge is power, bro. Absolutely.
knowledge and learning and trying to share that gift. I mean, that truly is growth for a
Information is
person
key.
and for society.
Yeah.
I also wanted to give a shout out before it's 8 o'clock. Rick Rose, Rick Paranormal Warnings is going to be on paranormalking.com at 8 o'clock. It's a radio show. I know he's in here, but I know he's going to have to get going. I'd like to thank Rick for popping in. And Simon, what future projects do you have coming out, or future intentions do you have with everything?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, if I can plug this right now, I'm moving house tomorrow morning, and so that means I'm going to be offline for a little while, a week, maybe 2 weeks, until I can get a new line put into the new house where I live. So for that time being, not much. I'll be filming what I can on the camera and putting it on the PC, but uploading it's going to be probably impossible due to the size of the files that I upload. They take hours. So primarily for the first month, between now and a month's time, not much. But then after that, I intend on exploring Scotland and ghost hunting up there. And there's lots and lots of places in Scotland that I can ghost hunt. There's actually a bridge that I want to go and visit, where there's been a lot of speculation as to what causes it, but dogs seem to just go and jump off the bridge to their suicide, and one person's done the same in the past. And I really want to investigate that bridge, and I also want to go to the Pennines. So at some point I'll be walking up and down the small mountains that are in Britain, and filming that as like a urban exploration. Oh, I say urban. It's not really urban, is it? Exploration of mountains, and I'll take my equipment, obviously, and see what I can find. But yeah, I'm going to be going kind of off for a wander to see what I can find in Scotland for a while. I'll get my whole house paid for, so I'm free, basically. I'm free to go and do what I want for a little while, which is going to be very fun. And I want to do Severall's Hospital at some point, but because I'm moving up north, I'm a lot further away from it in the future than I was here. So that might be some time before I get to that hospital. Also, I want to go there with Steve because I've promised that when we investigate that, we'll go together. So, as and when, I guess. But yeah, that's me for the next month.
Now, have you ever been curious or had any tests with trying to figure out if the older the location, the stronger the activity, or the less the activity? Especially in England. I mean, America is actually more of it's a newer civilization in essence than England. England is very, very old.
Well, you say that. It may not be. We don't really know how old the Indians are. The Native Americans, sorry.
Right.
Sorry.
But I mean, our civilization as, the Americans, not just the Indians.
I've noticed that's always caused an ominous loom around American culture. Is the Native American heritage in the ground always seems to cause you guys some kind of adverse activity. Do you ever notice that?
I have noticed that actually some of the locations that are fairly known as extremely haunted were sometimes, actually I would say probably 30% of them were Indian burial grounds or had some form of Indian burial ground associated with it.
Right. I find that really fascinating because
it's definitely a statistic that should be looked more into, for sure.
One of the things that I noticed about Native American tradition, sorry, it's so stereotypical of me to say that, but it just rolls off the tongue. Tobacco. Did you know tobacco is used as a cleansing for spirits?
No, actually.
So smoking in a room is actually cleansing, according to Native American tradition.
Well, it makes
just
sense
burning
with
the tobacco
sage and so forth.
Like the sage, just like sage, tobacco has the same kind of effect in their beliefs. So
that does not mean we support smoking.
Doesn't mean that we do. No, don't smoke. Bad habit. Don't start. Of course. That was one thing that I learned from the Native American tradition, was that tobacco smoke can be used as a cleansing for spiritual activity. So I never knew that before. So all the times I'm sat there smoking away in my room and I'm doing things, and I've probably cleared away a lot of what I probably want to attract. So
if you think about it, back then with the tobacco and so forth, nowadays it is dangerous for you to smoke it because of all the chemicals and all the shit that's in there. But back then it was all natural. It didn't have all the other...
Didn't have additives or preservatives or anything
and all
in there.
That shit in there.
No, it was probably a different type of plant altogether from what's grown nowadays. I mean, all the stuff that they shove in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But I did dodge your question a little bit there, and I didn't mean to. Do I think that older places in this country that have got a lot of history have a more significant effect on activity? I don't know. In absolute fairness, I do not know. The Southend Pier that I wanted to investigate is relatively new in historical terms. It's definitely not more than a couple of 100 years old, but it's got one portion of it was burnt down, and it's actually got a report from a police officer that chased an apparition into the water. He walked off the edge of where it was used to be, which was now burnt down, so it's not that long anymore. And this apparition walked off the edge, and the officers kind of stood there on the bars just watching it, bewildered. And this is a police report and that's a relatively new place. And then when we hear about some of the older haunts, like some of the castles, some of the theatres, they seem to be more repetitive apparitions. They do the same things. There's one particular one in the Lion and Lamb Walk in Farnham, where an old lady goes and sits down at a cafe. She orders a cup of coffee, takes the coffee to the table, pays for it with an old coin, sits down, drinks it, and then vanishes. And this is a story that keeps cropping up every couple of years or so.
Yeah,
So,
I've noticed actually here as well. A lot of people have talked about seeing Confederate soldiers or soldiers from the Civil War, or even Revolutionary soldiers, and a lot of Indians. I've heard numerous times of people seeing an Indian or stuff like that, and rarely have I actually heard too much about seeing like Elvis Presley, and you know what I mean, like in that aspect, like somebody from the 50s. I haven't heard too many
this
cases
is a very
of that.
good point you make. Since the introduction of media, mass media, and global technology, we've got these things called celebrities. They are famous people that are known worldwide, but we don't see their ghosts ever. Yet we see the ghosts of unknown random people, and the occasional.
Yeah, I was gonna say there is one occurrence, and it's Al Capone.
Al Capone.
I've looked into this. Al Capone. They have seen him in his Chicago home. They have seen him at Pennhurst, and they have seen him at his Florida home. And that makes no sense to me, because if a spirit is locked into a location, which apparently it can't be locked into a location, or is it residual, but people have seen his apparition 3 different locations: Chicago, Pennsylvania, and Florida.
Wow. Yeah, do you ever think about trying to contact the gentleman?
I think we did try to do a little bit with our Valentine's Day special, but I haven't focused too much with actually doing the celebrities for a long period of time.
It's not something I really tried either.
It's interesting, but it's also, I don't know. It's a touchy situation, either way.
I've always tried to contact spirits that are well known for being. Actually, it's kind of odd that I think about it, but I always have. I've always tried to contact spirits that are well known for being malevolent and genuinely dubbed as being evil. Not that I believe all of them are evil, because I actually believe some of the spirits that are dubbed as evil are quite the opposite. And I've also tried contacting spirits or demons, if you will, that I don't believe are spirits or demons. I believe they're ancient gods because of the history that I've read up on them. I mean, they were demonized, according to a book, 500 years ago, and then lived on for the next 500 years as demons, but before that they were revered as gods by an entire culture of people. So, yeah, I've done a little bit of trying to contact kind of known entities.
Yeah, I mean, I did it in the first part of the Spirit Box Weekly with trying to do a celebrity at the end, but more or less it was just to say thank you for doing what you did. You know, like the time I did, I think it was Robin Williams that I did do. I just said, Robin Williams, if you're able to hear this, thank you so much for the humor that you put out there. Heath Ledger, thank you so much for the acting that you were able to do. You know, just thank them for what they did. I mean, that if I had passed, I think that would be awesome to have at least somebody, if you're able to hear it, to hear that somebody says, just to let you know, all these people loved what you did. I think it would probably be like epic. It would be
millions of people. I loved
So-
Robin Williams. I thought he was great. You
I
know,
grew up with
it's a shame.
Hook and all the classics, Jumanji.
Hook, Jumanji, yeah, absolutely. I was watching those films too as a kid.
Yep.
Wait, hang on a minute.
Rufio.
Rufio! Wait, what was that other film? I'm trying to think of a
Mrs.
funny Robin
Doubtfire.
Williams quote.
Pat
Or whatever,
Chan-
there's hundreds.
Yeah,
I'm
Pat-
trying. Should we publicise this or not? But that must mean that you can't be that much older than me if you were growing up on the same movies.
No.
No.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, actually, the weirdest one is What Dreams May Come, which is...
I don't think I recognize that one.
When
Dreams May Come.
Yeah, What Dreams May Come. I think that's what it was called. What Dreams May Come.
Did you catch Good Morning Vietnam?
Oh yeah. But it was it was basically it was Robin Williams died, and it was his spirit wandering throughout the spirit realm. But it looked like his wife's painting, the realm that he was walking in, and
right.
As she would her emotions, like she throws water on the painting and it makes the whole world, that whole side of the world, disappear. But it was his thought of a happy place because it was a painting she drew of a time when they wanted to be together in this location. So that's where his mind took him, was to that place. But it was, it's really, it's definitely What Dreams May Come. It was awesome.
Very interesting the way you describe how it was his happy place and it was his mind that took him there. It's kind of how I'm starting to believe spirits act.
I'm trying to.
I'm using the word spirit loosely because I'm talking to you, but I kind of don't call them that anymore.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out, per se, how do they move? If we're using spirit boxes and we're able to communicate with them, how are they able to go from place to 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 place? You know,
I've got a theory that I could throw at you to enlighten you on that.
Sure.
It's us. The moment we think about it, they can manifest themselves, but they're not in a place. They're not. Try not to think of them as a wispy, wavy object that moves around. They're no longer.
Well, I think more
third-dimensional physical beings. They're in the fourth dimension.
Astrological. That's how I kind of viewed religion and everything. It's more astrological in the essence of God is the universe. The sun we see every day is the sun that we literally see. Like the Son of God is the sun we see every day. The three kings are the stars that line up, during Christmas time and so forth. And
you're getting there.
Angels
Dom, you're where I was a couple of years ago, my friend. Not to say that we're on any kind of different level spiritually here, but what I'm saying is, you're exactly where I was.
It doesn't denounce the other religions.
It doesn't denounce anything. It adds to it.
It doesn't denounce it at all. And that's like the biggest key for me is I am a confirmed Episcopalian. I grew up in a very religious family.
What was that word?
Episcopalian?
Yeah, what's that?
It's the closest thing I can compare it to is Catholicism.
Okay.
Basically, there's communion and the Lord's Prayer and so forth. All the same rituals of Catholicism. The only difference is the priest can get married. He can get married and has to do the sermon and everything else. But that's really one of the biggest differences.
It's one thing I noticed while I was studying in church a few months back, because I had become because I had studied witchcraft in such depth, I had read so much about it and understood so much about it. When I went into church and started watching the things that they were doing in there, I was pointing out ritual, summoning, calling the quarters, asking for guidance, release, evocation, invocation, and I was seeing witchcraft in the church everywhere I was looking, in subtle places, even down to the altar.
Well, that was my discrepancy, really, with organized religion, and that essence is, in the Bible it states not to basically go to a building to worship me, not to focus all of your worship in a building. So to me, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense.
Do you want another one that doesn't make sense?
I went atheist for quite a while, and then a lot of things. A lot of things happened, and you kind of as people we try to connect the dots, and there are so many different occurrences that I just eventually I looked more into the stars and astrological stuff. I also saw the movie The Zeitgeist, which I'm sure
you watched Zeitgeist.
Yeah, I watched that as well, and that really opened up
my
eyes.
Second?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I believe
very
there's
eye-opening.
a third, if I remember right.
That was very third eye-opening, if you will. That
Yeah.
really... I mean, I already knew a lot of the information that was coming out, but the way it was presented pieced it all together quite nicely for me. Things like the banks and the monetary system, fractional reserve banking and the stock market, and then government, shadow government, military industrial complex, blah, blah, blah. Pieced it all together in a very nice little context for me. And I now tell people about the Rothschild family and the four sons that went to the four corners of the globe and basically took over the banks and the corporations, and the story of how one father took all the gold that he could possibly muster and then started selling it instead of to people but to queens and governments, because he knew there was more profit in that. And sure enough, he was right, because now who dictates as a second right hand to our queen? Evelyn Rothschild. So it all makes a lot of sense when you look into it.
Yeah, I had a lot of quarrels at the age of 20, 21, 22. My father is a Freemason, and he kept asking me every year, would you be interested? Would you be interested? Would you be interested? Would you be interested? And I'm like, no. I need to know about it, and I need to know, like, what it truly is before I say yes to something like that, because it's a fraternal brotherhood that a lot of people will call it a secret society. Nowadays, we live in an internet-based world. If you are interested in anything about it, look it up. There's a lot of information out there. But I finally, at the age of 23, I researched enough about it, and I said, okay, I think this is good. I think this is who I am. And I chose to do that. It fit the same beliefs that I had, the same moralities that I had, the same basis of, the main pursuit of it is to strive to be better men. I mean, that's the pursuit of it, in essence. It derived from the Knights Templar, in England and so forth, and got changed over here, and I realized that.
So I have a question for you now.
Sure.
On that same kind of subject,
okay.
It's digressing a little bit. Have you ever heard of the law of attraction?
Yes, I have.
What is your opinion on that?
I haven't studied too much about it in depth.
Okay, I could give you a very quick blurb and then ask you the same question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Everything, thoughts think, and when you put a thought out into the universe, it needs to realign itself to reciprocate your wants and needs. It is like the rule of the universe. So think of everything, space, stars, Earth, planet, down to molecules in your body. If you think it, you can manifest it, like physically. So, what do you think?
Be completely honest, I had one of the greatest individuals I think I ever met. Her name is Colleen. The boat that I used to work on, she was a first mate before I was. She was the very first mate. And we sat down, we had very deep conversations about that, actually. And for a majority of it, I mean, she basically would explain in essence that the energy in which you are, the energy in which you look for is the energy in which you will receive. So if you push out an energy, and I'll give a great example. If you're pushing out an energy that you think women, in essence, are not fit to do certain things, then the energy that comes back is going to be. I'll use the actual one out there. If you think that women, in essence, are only using guys to be a paycheck, by like sleeping with them and having a child and be a paycheck, that's the type of woman you're going to find, because that is the energy you're putting out there. which sadly at the time was exactly the thought I had. But
well, I could give you an example in my life where something similar has happened. I've told the story many times now online, but I was using a stone. I called it a gratitude stone, and I put a thought out into the universe of what I wanted, and it took 2 weeks. That was it. The universe realigned itself and reciprocated my wants, and I found myself physically visualizing exactly what I had imagined attaining. And way back then scared the crap out of me, because I thought, shit, this is like magic, this works. I kind of understand it a little better now. To use another example, I want to move. I wanted it so bad. I'm moving tomorrow.
Right. I mean, I definitely have always felt, more so in the last couple of years, that if it's going to happen, say there, and I mean this sucks for some people in the essence, but I guess it's my own opinion or my own philosophy of it. But
Sure.
You know, if you were gonna decide that you wanted to become a priest at the age of 17 or 18, and you then went to college, became atheist, went through this and did this and did this and did this and did this, eventually that comes back to you if it's meant to be. So like, if you wanted to be a priest at that certain point in your time, and that was truly what you were destined for, it will come back to you in another form, but it does come right back to you. And I don't think we can run away from that. But that's my own philosophy, my own kind of opinion on it.
Okay. Well, that's cool, man. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of moving towards a just kind of like the belief on vibration, and how we, as spiritual beings in this human shell, we vibrate at a certain frequency. We can attract other frequencies of that same vibration, but we can't exist in the same space as a frequency that's of a lower vibration or a higher vibration. We can only be in the right place at the right time. That's not to say that I believe we're fated to do things, or that like karma, or like
it's
destiny, or whatever.
It's tough because it's like,
I
is there
believe it to be a
destiny or fate?
choice.
Yeah.
I believe it to be a choice wholeheartedly, and that choice we make in our minds. We think about what we want to be, and then we'll either become it or we won't, based on the vibration that we're putting out. Same with pretty much everything and anything. That's what I'm starting to believe in now. I say starting, I pretty much am believing in that. I want to go traveling. I think that's what's about to happen. I'm pretty sure that's what's about to happen.
Right. But I mean, maybe you were destined to do that. Maybe there was something that, maybe that was a part.
I think if I was destined to do it, I would have done it at 17, bro, when I was traveling, because I was traveling back then. I didn't have to go home and start working to end up living in a shithole like this. I mean,
but yeah, it brought you right back to what you were doing when you were 18 or 19. You know what I mean? You were traveling then, and now
a long way round, but yeah.
The choices are the little escapes, in essence. Like you have, I guess the best way I can explain it, you have a path that is predetermined, like a labyrinth, like a maze. Okay, you start at the beginning, and that maze can go all different directions. You can choose to go any direction you want, but at the end of it, it's always the same center. It's always the same end. So I mean, the choices that we make, we can go in circles. We can go this way, that way, whichever way you want. But when we finally find the end, it's always the same ending.
It's a different way of looking at it, but I like it.
It's something to really it gets you thinking a little bit.
It reminds me of Pan's Labyrinth, the
Exactly.
80s film,
Yep.
and I'm kind of you look down one way and it's an endless direction. You look down another, but then at certain points you can slip through the wall.
Right.
As long as you find that little snail that tells you it's there.
Yeah, I mean,
for slug or whatever it was.
I don't think the choices. I'm not saying that the choices don't exist. That's not at all. I'm just saying that the choices give us different adventures down that path, and finally, after that path is completed, or we find our way back, once we've accomplished what we needed to, at the end of the travel, you start at the beginning. At the end of that. At the end of your life, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You just made more of an adventure out of it than maybe you needed to.
Interesting. So, is there anything else you'd like to know, Dom?
I think we should do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, at some point when I get back online, definitely. I'll be well up for that.
But I would like to thank everybody for tuning in, and thanks for supporting Simon. And don't forget to check out his channel.
Yes,
you can find
guys.
that in the description below. If you don't have his Twitter, you can find that in the description below. And don't forget to check out Paraglobal TV. It's the one-stop location for paranormal shows and interesting tidbits of information. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. Simon and I were the collaborators with that, which we could discuss that in part 2.
Yeah, why not? That sounds cool actually. In part 2, why not discuss why we created Paranormal Global TV?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Tell everybody what our kind of mission is, if you will. What the reason behind building that platform was.
Yeah, I think
that'd be an
that's
interesting talk.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great show. And everybody, if you haven't tuned over to it yet, Rick is on paranormalking.com doing a radio show right now. I didn't want to go too far over because I wanted to help support him as well. But everybody have a great evening, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll catch you when we catch you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Peace and light. Have a good week.